The next is the Independence for Change, being taken by Deputy Tommy Broughan.
Thanks, Lascan. And Taoiseach, as you know, I wrote to you at the end of May and to other ministers following the appalling series of gun murders in Dublin Bay North and asking what steps your government was going to take. I detail, of course, the outstanding work of our schools, a wide range of DBN community bodies in fields like employment and enterprise, child and elder care, youth work and sports and drug rehabilitation. Now, at that time, Taoiseach, as you know, many community leaders who greatly admired the Mulvey report on the North Inner City creating a better future, they believe that a similar programme implementation board should be established for Dublin Bay North. The North Inner City initiative, of course, with which my colleague Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan was heavily involved in bringing forward, it includes tackling crime and drugs, maximising education and training, integrating social services and improving the physical landscape. But there is a strong belief that we need a coordinated response involving all the existing local agencies, perhaps led by Northside Partnership, An Garda Síochána, Dublin City, Fingal County Council and key government departments, and fully resourced to tackle all of the issues which gave rise to the recent upsurge of crime. So will our constituency, and is there a case, Taoiseach, for a national, because there's 7 or 8 constituencies, I think, of the 40 that are particularly badly affected, to have a national programme, a similar programme of support. Your own constituency, by the way, is one of them. So will you launch a new national strategy to support investment in all areas affecting having cumulative disadvantage, perhaps led by a high-level interdepartmental group? Now, I know departments are engaged on their own in carrying out important work. The Department of Children and Youth Affairs is carrying out a major reform of youth services, but funding in the sector for our constituency was less than £2 billion. For most of our constituency, was less than £2 million in 2018. The Minister there beside you, the Department of Rural and Community Development, we have this CCAP programme, but again, the Community Enhancement Programme, as the Minister knows, only allocated €700,000 for Dublin. And there's also a lot of continuing criticism of CTEC in relation to employment and youth employment. And with regard to legislation, Minister, or Taoiseach, and estate management, you haven't brought forward, after 8.5 years, the Housing Regulation of Improved Housing Bodies or the reformed Housing Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1997 to strengthen estate management. Now, despite the €1.76 billion Garda budget, I think people are still feeling generally that there needs to be much greater visibility of Gardaí, especially in the evenings, with perhaps a doubling of community Gardaí. So when are you going to bring forward the long-promised policing and community safety bill? And Taoiseach, when you look at Q1 of the recorded crime statistics, which are statistics under reservation, it shows a shocking increase across a whole range of crimes: sexual offences, attempts or threats to murder and assault, kidnapping, robbery, extortion, fraud and deception, controlled drug offences. All of these are happening, Taoiseach, on your watch and affecting all our constituencies, of course, both rural and urban, but in fact 7 or 8 constituencies particularly badly. And finally, Taoiseach, what's the latest position with regard to the report of the working group, which is chaired by Mr Justice Sheehan, which was considering decriminalisation for small amounts of drugs for personal use, and allowing the Gardaí to focus on very serious crime and very serious pushing? But what's the position on that? I understand, Taoiseach, you have that report. You haven't brought it to Cabinet yet. Thanks.
Thanks, Deputy. There are a lot of specific questions there, and I'll do my best to answer them in the time allocated. I did receive your letter. I have read it. I'm not sure if you've received the response yet, but it is in train. On the specific questions that you ask in relation to legislation, the Public and Community Safety Bill, which is the legislation to bring into law a lot of the recommendations made by Kathleen O'Toole in the Commission she led on the reform of policing. We'd expect to have the legislation next year. It is being worked on at the moment by Minister Flanagan and the Department of Justice. Would ideally like to have heads this year, and then the legislation published and enacted through the course of next year. On the 2 housing pieces of legislation which you ask about, I don't have a timeline on them at the moment, but I will ask Minister Murphy to communicate with you and update you on that. In relation to the report from Justice Sheehan, I don't have that yet. I haven't seen it. But I know that it's quite advanced, and once I do get it and have a chance to read it, we'll bring it to Cabinet and publish it thereafter. But what's examining, as you'll be aware, is whether we should change our approach to dealing with drugs, moving away from one that is founded on criminal justice and enforcement to one that is more based on treating it as a health issue. I look forward to receiving that report once it's ready. In terms of our response to crime, it has to be twofold. As a former British Prime Minister once said, we need to be tough on crime and also tough on the causes of crime. We're tough on crime by increasing Garda resources, and they're unprecedented resources now for the Gardaí, and they're continuing to increase all the time. Additional Gardaí allocation to the Dublin stations, as you'll know, quite recently, reflecting the need for that to be done given the high levels of crime in Dublin, and also investment in ICT, in equipment and vehicles, and that will continue into next year and into the future. And in terms of being tough on the causes of crime, that means tackling some of the underlying issues that cause people to choose a life of crime when others may not. And those are issues particularly related to social and educational disadvantage, and we're doing that as well. I think the North East Inner City Initiative is a very good one. We've yet to see whether or not it's had good outcomes. What's been done has been very good. It's probably too early to judge whether the outcomes have been good, because we can't assess that at the moment. But unfortunately, as is often the case with a very targeted, very specific initiative, it wouldn't be feasible to do that nationwide. We just wouldn't have the capacity, the people, the finances to do that in the 10 or 20 other places that people propose to be done, including places in my own constituency. But perhaps we can do something similar in those areas of deep disadvantage, including in your constituency and mine. We do have the Community Enhancement Programme. One of the things we're examining is whether we should relaunch something similar to the RAPID programme which exists in the past and identify maybe 10 or 20 areas of particular disadvantage around the country on an evidence basis and target them to do something similar but not the same to the North East Inner City Partnership.
Supplementary, 1 minute.
Thanks, Lascan. Well, unfortunately, Taoiseach, I think you're neither tough enough on crime or tough enough on the causes of crime. But I mean, we do have a reasonably good social infrastructure in Dublin Bay North. But surely it is a moment when we need to be thinking about a national strategy. We tend to look back to, say, 25 years ago. I think the trade union movement, led by Peter Cassells, they did inspire the development at that time of the whole local partnership approach. And surely, you know, there is an importance at this moment in time to do something similar. And I'm totally aware, with the Budget Committee, I'll be meeting Deputy O'Donoghue at 2 o'clock in relation to budgetary matters. But you know, surely this is the kind of initiative we do need. In DBN, especially, of course, Taoiseach, we have a long-awaited new divisional Garda headquarters, and I wrote to Commissioner Harris about that and urged him to consider a location for the headquarters in the hugely expanding North Fringe. And there's one site in particular just north of Darndale Belcamp Parish, which would be you know, a good site for that headquarters. But in relation to the legislation available to Garda Síochána, can I just ask you, I mean, Deputy Durkan has proposed, my former colleague on the Public Accounts Committee, that we should simply proscribe organised crime gangs and members of crime gangs. So we should take that, because they're enemies of our state and of our republic. We should take that step, and a lot of us would agree with Deputy Durkan. That's the initiative we should take. And can I just ask you finally, I mean, are you going to take any response to the recent Supreme Court decision on mandatory minimum sentences, where they struck down part of the Firearms Act?
Thanks very much, Deputy. The answer to your initial question is yes, and we are considering a revised approach and a new approach to target areas of particular disadvantage around the state. There are a lot of programmes already, as you'd be aware, programmes such as the local drug and alcohol task forces, DESH in education, the school meals programme, the community enhancement programme, and also 2 million set aside in the new contract with the GPs to, for the first time, provide extra resources to GPs who are working in areas of high levels of disadvantage, recognising that there's a link between disadvantage and poor health. And I think that's going to be the start point, if you like, for having something like DESH, but for healthcare, and something that I think will make a big difference. What we probably don't do well enough is join it all up together. And that's what we need to do, and that's what I've asked ministers to work on over the next couple of months.
Now